So if you've taken contemporary programming with me, you know what my favorite website is to get connection strings. Connectionstrings.com. It's not really my favorite, it's just really easy to remember. Because it's connectionstrings.com. So there's connection strings for just about anything here. So I'm going to cruise down to SQL Server. .NET Framework data providers. At this point, I usually just do a Control F and I type local DB. And the one that we want is the second one here, local DB automatic instance with specific database file. So I'm going to highlight that. Copy. Flip back to my project. And where I'm going to go is actually into my web config folder. So if this was a console or a Windows application, you would have an app config. Because this is a web application, you have a web config. Inside of the web config, it's not part of the template anymore. There's a element type called connection strings. Typically, it's up here at the top. It honestly doesn't matter where you put it, but it has to be off of the configuration element. So it has to be a child of configuration. I usually like to set it right here between config sections and app settings. So bracket, connection strings, and then the element is an add element. The connection string is just that, a string, and this is where I paste what I just stole from connectionstrings.com. You have to take out the line break. It all has to be on one line. And actually at the front here, just because it's easier to read, we're going to give this a name. That name, to make it really easy, the name of your connection string should be the name of your DB context class. So in our case, it's project DB context. That should be the name of your connection string. You can make it whatever you want, and if you choose to do that, then you actually have to go back into your DB context and add a constructor that passes or captures that connection string and passes it to the base class. I can show you that after we get done here. So this last piece that says attach DB file name, that's where we need to point it to our MDF file. Now you see here that they use an absolute path c/myfolder/mydata.mdf. That's fine, as long as you never move your project from the computer you're using right now. Never put it in a different folder, you never send it to me, none of those things. If you do this, I will dock you 5 points, because your computer is not like my computer. I'm not going there. So instead, what you do is you point it to the app data folder. And you do that by taking out the absolute part and doing pipe data directory pipe / the name of your MDF. In my case, it's 15fs project db.mdf. ASP.NET does some fanciness with that data directory token and actually points it to the app data folder. So if we wanted to change that name to something else, just for those of you who may be curious, we would have to add a constructor. Snippet is CTOR, double tab. And then from our constructor, we can call the base class constructor by doing : base. This is before the curly brackets. And you'll see that there's a no parameter constructor for the base class, which is DB context. And the second one after that is either the name or connection connection string that the context is connecting to. And here we would put project DB context, if I can spell context. Alternatively, we could actually overload our constructor and say name or const string, and we could pass in here that variable. What that does is that when we go to create an instance of our project DB context, it's going to require us to pass in a string that is the name or connection string of the DB context we want to connect to. It's completely legit. It's often seen when you're using dependency injection, where maybe your connection is dynamic or it needs to be served up based on something else in your system. So it's perfect. It's perfectly legit. It's not connection string, it's con string. And it can be done. In our case, I'm saying I'm saving you some time. Just make sure that your connection string name is the name as your context, and it will take care of the rest. Fair enough? All right. So we've got all of this in place. It's beautiful. Let's rebuild, make sure we didn't break anything. All right, everything looks like it's good. So now we are ready to go ahead and wire up our account creation to actually add a record to our database.